In the busy city of Abidjan, the University of Côte Lumière was full of excitement. The biggest event of the year, the Festival of Unity, was only a few days away. This festival brought everyone together to celebrate African tradition and modern student life. People danced, wore colorful clothes, played drums, and shared food from all over the country. For many students, it was a time to show their talents. And for the past 2 years, the star of the festival was Aisha Diop. Aisha was 21 years old. She was smart, graceful, and known across the campus for her dancing. When she danced, it was like watching a story come alive. Every move felt full of meaning, like she wasn't just dancing, but speaking through her body. Students clapped, cheered, and even cried when she performed. Last year, she led the final performance and everyone talked about it for weeks. So this year, everyone expected her to lead again. No one even asked. It was obvious. Aisha was the festival, but then something strange happened. 2 days before the big event, Aisha suddenly said she wouldn't perform. She didn't give a reason. She didn't say she was sick or tired. She just told the dance leader, "I'm not dancing this year," and left. She didn't look angry. She didn't even seem upset. She looked calm. Too calm. The news spread quickly across campus. In the dorms, in classrooms, in the canteens, everyone was talking about it. Why isn't Aisha dancing? Is she okay? Did someone hurt her? Is she pregnant? Rumors flew around like birds, but nobody knew the truth. And Aisha didn't say anything more. She kept going to classes, sitting quietly, wearing dull-colored clothes. She smiled politely when people spoke to her, but it was a small, tired smile. It wasn't the Aisha they knew. One person who couldn't stop thinking about it was Zara Touré. Zara was 20 years old and had been Aisha's best friend since secondary school. They studied together, danced together, even shared food when money was low. Zara knew Aisha better than anyone, or at least she thought she did. But now her best friend felt like a stranger. Aisha avoided her questions and didn't want to talk. One afternoon, Zara finally asked, "Aisha, why won't you dance this year? What's wrong?" They were sitting outside their dorm building, watching the sun go down. Aisha didn't answer right away. She just looked out over the city, her eyes sad and far away. Then she said softly, "Some stories should never be danced." Zara frowned. What does that mean? But Aisha stood up and walked away, saying nothing more. That night, Zara couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Aisha's words. What kind of story was too painful to dance? And what had happened to make her friend change so suddenly? The next morning, Zara looked through old photos of last year's festival. There were pictures of Aisha smiling, dancing, laughing with the group. But as Zara looked closer, something started to feel strange. In one photo, right after the final performance, Aisha stood alone at the side of the stage. She wasn't smiling. Her hands were tight at her sides, and she was staring at something, or someone, just out of the photo. Zara zoomed in. There, in the background, was a man. He was wearing a light blue boo-boo, with his arms crossed and a hard look on his face. Aisha was looking right at him, and her face showed something Zara had never seen before. Fear. Zara didn't recognize the man, but from Aisha's body language, she could tell he wasn't just a random stranger. Something about him scared Aisha. Deeply. Zara's heart began to race. Was this man part of the reason Aisha had refused to dance? Was he from her past? Or, worse, her family? Zara knew that Aisha came from a respected family in the north, a family proud of their tradition. But Aisha had never talked much about them. Whenever someone asked about her village, she gave short answers. Now Zara wondered what secrets were hiding in that silence. One thing was clear. Aisha's decision not to dance was not just a simple choice. It was tied to something much deeper. Maybe something painful. Maybe something dangerous. Zara didn't know what it was, but she knew she had to find out. Because whatever Aisha was afraid of, it wasn't just hurting her. It was eating her from the inside. And Zara wasn't the kind of friend who could watch that happen without doing something. Zara could not forget the fear in Aisha's eyes. It haunted her thoughts during class, during meals, even in her dreams. The man in the photo had to mean something. He was the key to the mystery. Aisha had always danced with so much joy, so much pride. Now she avoided music completely. Something had broken her spirit, and Zara needed to understand what. The next day, Zara skipped her afternoon class and went to the university library. She pulled out every newspaper and local report from the last few years, looking for anything linked to Aisha's family or her village. After hours of reading through old articles, one short news story caught her eye. It was from 2 years ago. The headline read, "Local girl escapes forced marriage in Dabu." Zara's heart skipped. Dabu was the name of Aisha's village. She read the article quickly. It said a girl from a respected family had run away from home just before a wedding, arranged by her uncle. The bride was only 19. The man she was being forced to marry was over 40. He was a village elder and a close friend of her late father. The article didn't name the girl, but Zara had a feeling she knew exactly who it was. Aisha. Suddenly, everything started to make sense. Zara rushed back to the dorm and found Aisha sitting by the window, looking out at the sky. She held the newspaper clipping in her hand. "Aisha," she said softly, "was this you?" Aisha didn't look surprised. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and nodded. "Yes, that was me." Then she began to tell the truth, the real story behind her silence. When Aisha was 19, she returned to her village during a school break. Her father had died the year before, and her uncle had taken over family responsibilities. He told Aisha that a marriage had been arranged between her and a wealthy village elder named Bayo. Aisha refused. She said she wanted to finish university and live her own life. But her uncle didn't care. He said it was tradition, that women from their family had always been married off young to keep peace and respect in the village. Aisha begged her mother to stop it, but her mother was afraid. "If we break the tradition," she had said, "we will be shamed." The night before the wedding, Aisha packed her bag and ran away in the middle of the night. She took a taxi back to Abidjan and never looked back. For 2 years, she told no one, not even Zara. She tried to forget the village, the marriage, the threats. But last year, during the festival, something happened that brought it all back. That man in the photo, the one behind the stage, was Bayo. He had come to the festival. Somehow, he had found her. He didn't speak to her, but he didn't have to. Just seeing him again, standing in the crowd, had broken something inside her. That night, he sent her a message. "You may run, but you are still mine." Aisha had deleted the message, blocked the number, and told herself it was over. But this year, she started seeing signs again. Strange men watching her near the dorm. A note slipped under her door. "If you dance again, everyone will know." She didn't know what they meant exactly, but she was scared. She stopped dancing to protect herself. But even that didn't stop the fear. Zara sat quietly as her friend finished telling the story. She felt angry. Angry at the uncle who betrayed Aisha. Angry at the man who thought he could own her. Angry that no one had helped. She reached out and held Aisha's hand. "You're not alone anymore," she said. "We're going to do something about this." Aisha shook her head. "It's not that easy. If my family finds out I told someone, they'll disown me. They already blame me for bringing shame." Zara thought for a moment. Then we won't go to your family. We'll go to someone who can really help. The next day, Zara made an appointment with a professor named Madame Diarra, who taught women's studies. She was known for being kind, but also strong, a woman who had helped students escape bad situations before. Zara and Aisha met her in her office, and Aisha told the whole story again, this time with more courage. Madame Diarra listened carefully. She didn't interrupt. When Aisha finished, Madame Diarra said, "You were never wrong for choosing your future, and no man, no tradition, has the right to take your freedom." Madame Diarra helped Aisha report the threats to campus security and the local police. She also contacted a lawyer who worked with women's rights groups in Côte d'Ivoire. Within days, Aisha was moved to a safer dorm, and Zara stayed close by her side. But the twists weren't over. 2 nights before the festival, someone broke into Aisha's old room. They didn't take anything. They just scattered her dance clothes all over the floor and spray-painted the wall. You were warned. It was clear the man, or someone working for him, was still watching. That was the final push Aisha needed. She looked at Zara and said, "You know what? I will dance. Not for the festival, not for the university, but for me. And for every girl who's been told to stay silent." Zara smiled. "Then let's get you ready." Together they planned something no one expected. The day of the festival arrived. The entire university was buzzing with excitement. Students wore colorful outfits, the air smelled of grilled street food, and the sound of drums echoed through the open courtyards. People came from all over Abidjan: parents, alumni, reporters, and even government guests. The stage had been set in the center of campus, decorated with traditional fabrics, woven baskets, and paper lanterns in the national colors. Every team was ready to perform: singers, poets, storytellers, everyone except Aisha. Or at least, that's what they thought. Aisha had kept her plan quiet. Only Zara, Madame Diarra, and one trusted dance team member knew. For days, she trained, in secret, late at night, in the quiet practice room, alone with the mirror and her memories. This time, the dance wasn't about joy. It was about truth. Every move, every beat, would tell the story she had kept hidden for 2 years. Her pain, her silence, her escape. She would not speak it with words. She would speak it with her body. Zara stood backstage, watching the other performers. Her heart was pounding. She kept checking her phone, making sure Aisha hadn't changed her mind. She was scared, not because Aisha wasn't ready, but because of what could happen. What if the man came back? What if someone tried to stop her? What if her family saw the dance and understood what it meant? But at the same time, Zara knew one thing: Aisha was stronger than she had ever been. As the final group left the stage, the festival host stepped up. "Now," she said with a smile, "we close with a surprise performance. Please, welcome Aisha Diop." Gasps spread through the crowd. Students looked at each other in shock. But she wasn't going to dance. This year. She refused. What changed? The music began. A soft, slow rhythm of drums and chorus strings. Aisha walked onto the stage, wearing a plain white wrap dress, no makeup, no jewelry, just herself. Her hair was braided simply, and her face was calm but serious. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She simply stood there for a moment, letting the silence fall over the audience. Then she began to move. At first, the steps were small and tight, like a bird trapped in a cage. Her arms wrapped around her body, and her eyes looked down. As the drums grew louder, her movements became faster, struggling, turning, twisting. The crowd watched in silence. They didn't understand the full meaning, but they felt something powerful in her dance. It wasn't like anything they'd seen before. Zara stood on the edge of the stage, tears in her eyes. The dance told the story of a young girl who was promised to a man she didn't love. A girl who begged, who cried, but was told her voice didn't matter. A girl who ran away, afraid but brave. A girl who lived with shame that was never hers to carry. And finally, a girl who refused to stay silent any longer. The music slowed again. Aisha lifted her arms high, like breaking chains. Her last movement was strong, a stomp that echoed through the speakers like a heartbeat. Then silence. The audience was frozen. Some people were crying, others were speechless. Even the festival host didn't know what to say. Suddenly, a loud voice came from the back of the crowd. "She's lying!" Everyone turned. A man in a blue boo-boo pushed forward. It was Bio, the same man from the photo, the one who had tried to force Aisha into marriage. "She is trying to destroy my name," he shouted. "This is not true. She dishonored her family." Security guards stepped forward, but before they could reach him, Aisha spoke into the microphone. "For the first time, I was told that silence would protect me," she said, her voice clear and strong, but it only protected him. "Today, I break the silence, not just for me, but for every girl told that her body is not her own. For every girl told tradition matters more than her dreams. This dance is not a performance. It is a warning. I will never be silent again." The crowd erupted in applause. Bio tried to speak again, but this time police officers, contacted earlier by Madame Diarra, stepped in. He was taken away for questioning. Madame Diarra had sent the police copies of the messages he sent Aisha, along with the report of the threats and the break-in. Everything was recorded. Aisha stepped off the stage and into Zara's arms. They held each other tightly. "I was so scared," Aisha whispered. "You did it," Zara said. "You were amazing." In the days that followed, Aisha's dance went viral. Someone had recorded it and posted it online with the title, "The Dance That Spoke the Truth." People across the country watched it. Women messaged her from villages, towns, and cities, saying they finally felt seen. Some students came forward to share their own stories. The university invited Aisha to speak on stage again, this time, not as a dancer, but as a leader. But the biggest twist came later. Aisha received a letter. It was from her mother. "My daughter," it read, "I watched your dance. I wept. I was wrong. I thought silence was safety, but your voice showed me courage. Come home when you are ready. Not as someone's bride, but as my daughter who taught me something I never dared to learn." Aisha folded the letter slowly. Her hands trembled. "I think," she said to Zara, "I'm finally free." Weeks passed after the festival, but the memory of Aisha's dance still lived in the hearts of everyone who saw it. Students whispered about it between lectures, professors brought it up in class, and people across the city discussed it in markets and salons. The video of her performance reached news stations, talk shows, and women's rights groups across West Africa. Aisha Diop was no longer just a student or a dancer. She had become a voice that had shaken walls many thought would never fall. At first, Aisha was overwhelmed by the attention. Reporters sent emails. Organizations asked her to speak. Former classmates, even people she barely knew, messaged her to say how brave she was. Some told her that she had saved their lives. Others said she gave them the courage to say no for the first time. It was beautiful, but also exhausting. Aisha wasn't used to being seen this way, not as a victim, not even as a hero, just as someone who had tried to protect herself and finally found the strength to speak. But the city had changed. Something in the air was different. The same university that once stayed silent about women's issues now invited Aisha to help start a new student group focused on women's rights and safety. Madame Diarra, who had stood by her like a second mother, became her mentor in the project. They called the group The Rhythm We Choose, because the power of choice, Aisha believed, was everything. Still, not everyone was proud of her. One afternoon, Aisha received another letter. This time, it was from her uncle, the same man who had tried to force her into marriage. The letter was cold, written with anger, not love. It said, "You have shamed us. Our name will never be clean again. You speak of freedom, but you have destroyed our place in the village." Aisha held the letter in her hands for a long time. She didn't cry. She didn't even feel fear anymore. Instead, she folded it, placed it in an envelope, and wrote one sentence on the back. "I was never your property to protect or to shame." Then she threw it away. But the biggest twist came not from her family or the university, but from someone no one expected to hear from again. Bayo, the man who had chased her, threatened her, and tried to control her life. His trial was quiet, and many didn't know what happened afterward. The police had charged him with harassment and threats, but because of his wealth and power, the case moved slowly. Then one day, Madame Diarra called Aisha into her office, Shiwa. "Need to hear this," she said, holding her phone up. It was a voice message from a young woman. She was crying softly. "My name is Aminata," the voice said. "I was going to be married to Bayo next month. I saw Aisha's story, and I ran. I escaped. Please tell her thank you. Her dance saved me." Aisha covered her mouth. Her heart felt like it had stopped for a second. She had danced to speak her truth. She never imagined it would become a lifeline for someone else. But Aminata's message was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, more stories began to appear. Other women, in villages, towns, even in cities, shared that they too had been promised to men they didn't want. Some had escaped, some hadn't. But Aisha's dance became a symbol, a message of hope, and a warning to those who believed. Women had no voice. It was then that Aisha made a decision, one that surprised even Zara. "I want to go back," she said one evening as they sat watching the city lights. "Back?" Zara asked. "To your village? After everything?" Aisha nodded. "Not to stay, just to speak, to show the girls there that they are not alone, that there is another way." Zara hesitated. "What if they hate you?" "They already do," Aisha said quietly. "But maybe one girl, just one, will hear me." So, Aisha traveled back to Dabu, not with fear, but with strength. The same girl who had once run away in the night now walked boldly into the village square. Her mother met her with tears and a long, silent hug. Her uncle refused to speak to her. Many villagers turned their heads, but others watched her with curiosity, even respect. At the local girls' school, Aisha gave a speech. She didn't say anything too loud, no big drama, just her truth. She talked about her story, about dancing at the festival, about fear and silence and finding her voice. The teachers listened, the students cried, and when she finished, one girl, maybe 13 or 14, stood up and said, "I want to dance like you." That was all Aisha needed to hear. She returned to Abidjan with peace in her heart. Not everything was fixed. Not every family would change. But the door had been opened. And sometimes that was enough. Months later, Aisha stood on stage again. Not at the university, but at a national event for women's rights. She wore a blue wrap dress and carried no microphone. As the music began, she danced. But this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a beginning.